Hello, I want to give you a brief overview of Hazu, but specifically the AI aspect of it and how we leverage artificial intelligence to boost productivity for teachers, students, and pretty much everybody. Let's have a quick look at this model here first, and also to give you context about what we do at Hazu. So we see that the digital transformation or the digitization of the world happens in a few stages, and this is this so-called SAMR model by Dr. Puentedura, and we see that the very basic form is that we substitute analog processes with digital ones. We then move on to augmentation. That's no longer just the one-on-one representation of the A4 sheet to the digital version of it. There we have some enhancements, some augmentation with it, like spell check in Word and things like that. Then modification, this already goes a step further, and but it's mostly still sort of based on these old concepts. So even the sort of modern cloud platforms that we find nowadays are still quite often inspired and actually leaning towards using paradigms like, you know, the A4 paper, the sheets, but also folders, or even basing things on principles like the inbox and email. So there we see that while this is a progression and this allows us to be more productive, it's actually not leveraging or allowing us to leverage the full power of things like artificial intelligence or even new kinds of interactions and realities like AR, VR, and XR. So how do we approach this at Hazu? We approach this with first principle reasoning. So in our world, everything is an item. So we have these Lego kind of elements that we use to basically make up the entire digital world. So I can say hello there. This could be an item that has a title. I can give this a color and also an icon. Something like this. And I can also add text now, and basically elements that I'm already used to from common word processing applications. However, I can do things here that are a little bit harder to do in something like Word. For example, I can insert an audio message. Hello, how is everybody doing? I can add files, videos, and things that go way beyond what you would normally be able to also add into something like a PDF. And with these elements put together, I can then structure something like here that's an entire workshop. And now the clue in Hazu is that we basically put you and your content first. So you start with saying, okay, I want to build a workshop like this. I can now add these things. So this looks like a document. This would be something I could print if I wanted to. But at the same time, we have these different views up here. Maybe I'm switching the language here. So you see Hazu speaks multiple languages. So you can see the content, of course, is still in the language you add, but the whole interface can be used in multiple languages. So if I now switch to a different view, like presentation, you see that the same thing that was sort of shown in a document before, I can now present seamlessly without having to start from scratch with my presentation. This can then be taken further all the way to the point where people create entire structures with it. So they can put these items into a container that we call a Hazu. So this is a structure like this. And these structures, they can be concatenated and put together basically to follow a logical structure that represents your school, your organization, your university, your project, or your event. You can then also make use of other views. So we have seen the presentation, we have seen the list view, but let's have a look and also look at maybe the Hazu map. And here we see now the exact same world that we saw before that we can navigate through in this mind map representation. I can look at this from the first level, I can look at this from the second level, and I can even expand it way, way further and then use the help of filters in order to find things that are maybe interesting to me following a certain principle. Or if I use this for project management, I can find things that are assigned to a specific person. So that's been the list view, presentation view, the Hazu map. We also have some other interesting views. For example, if we're using this in the context of project management, we see now that the icons and the colors here, I use them to indicate the meaning of the status of that project. And therefore, I can then also make use of our boards view in order to see this in this view. And I can then maybe move things around, see it like that. And here we also can have a look at our next view, which is the geo view. So these projects, they have a location added to them that I can just specify here. And that immediately gives me the possibility to also look at that in the geographical view. We have also video support, so we can add and integrate videos seamlessly. We can then click on a certain item and then jump directly to that position inside the video. So you see, it's a magic blend between something that normally would be a presentation tool, something like a document or a handout that I would create, something where I would send users or students to YouTube and then maybe they get lost there, but also an interaction platform where I can get feedback directly right here without changing the channel. And it's all real time. So the second I change an icon or a symbol here, everybody has it. So no more versioning, no more PDFs, no more uploading things, no more storing things locally and then uploading them somewhere else in another system. This can all be integrated seamlessly. So now we see a little bit how with a concept like this, new things are possible because we have basically removed the need to think down into PDFs, into files, into folders. We have something that's much more flexible. And if we're actually thinking that through, this means that we can even use this in virtual reality. So this is an example now of the exact same world that you saw before. And I can also now use this. I can navigate this. I can watch it like this. I can open up things like this that have 360-degree images added to them. And again, it's exactly the same world based on this very simple and visual principle. Even 3D animations and objects are possible to use here. So you see, this is simply a 3D object added to an item like this, and therefore I can also view it like this. Now on to artificial intelligence. If we now combine the power of something like ChatGPT with this very powerful visual paradigm, then we can actually really unlock the full potential of both of these even better. And we have done that by building Hazu Genius. Hazu Genius is a ChatGPT-like interface, but it combines the power of a large language model like GPT-3 and 4 with the power of the visual concept that Hazu has. So instead of just having text in and then text out, we have the possibility to put out entire Hazu's structures and more. If I can show you an example here first, this is something that 2 weeks ago at Didakta in Stuttgart, a teacher has created basically within 1 minute. And this has been a worksheet that she told us she created over the weekend, and it took her 2 to 3 hours to create. So she had the concept that she wants to have a lesson for students. Let's say it was here it was a English lesson, very, very beginner's lesson. And to make it more interesting, she wanted to combine it and say this is a sightseeing tour in London to look at culture and museums. And so she researched all this, and at the end she created a document in Word that took her, as she said, including research and everything, 2 to 3 hours. We told her, what if we can build this here together and you can actually do it? We didn't do anything there, in 1 minute. And that's exactly what she did. So she typed into Hazu Genius to say, okay, I want to create a lesson for beginners English, I think it was like 3rd or 4th grade. And then she wanted to basically have, a content created in London. And she typed that in, and this is exactly then what came out a few moments later. And she saw now that this is not only replacing the A4 paper that she created before. So this is what she would have created before, which would just be like a flat sheet of paper. And this was, as she said, a lot more structured and beautiful than what she could actually do in Word. So she was really happy also with the formatting and this really clean and visual look. But we now can use all the power of Hazu, right? Like presenting this with our presentation view and basically showing this to the students like this. Or if I am now looking at the interactions, I can also use this to engage with students, right? They can say which are maybe the topics they want to dive into further, or they can comment, and I can make a very simple exercise to say, hey, maybe add what you like about these things and who you would visit that with. And that can be something that really then again allows completely new ways of engagement. In addition, because these have geotags, they came out just from Hazu Genius directly as well. We can also now visualize this on the geo view. And this makes learning a lot more engaging, and we can also mix something that would have just been maybe a sheet of paper in an English lesson with a much more interactive, engaging tour of London, where we can also then basically understand something about geography maybe. So that's just the beginning of what is possible. And in this week at Didacta, we created actually a whole lot of content with the people there. We created basically an entire library of lessons and pieces of content, and that's just really fascinating to see what people came up with. Like a 65-year-old teacher, she's almost going into retirement, but she created something about a sewing machine and what are sort of the common pitfalls when using it. I want to still give you a last little demo of this, and therefore we jump into this interface. Those of you who have already used ChatGPT, they already know this a little bit, and this is the prompt where we can now enter a task. Cognitive biases, lesson for first year university students. We also now see that this is choosing an icon here, a color, and it gives it a structure. And not only can we now use this as a Hazu, we can also obviously, before we export it, right, we can make changes to it. We can also chat and say what are maybe things that we want set here. So let's say these are now some very famous cognitive biases, and we see these are added here as well. And I see that one of my favorite ones might not be listed, which is the Dunning-Kruger effect. So I could say add the Dunning-Kruger effect. Then I can say maybe add 2 bullet points with concrete examples to each subchapter. So these are like the chapters and these are the subchapters, and I can talk to it like this. And yeah, I think maybe we say also add a table in the beginning with a 1-line description of each bias in German and English, because maybe I have students that also need to learn some of this in English because that's where the literature are, but maybe they work in a German or a French market, and they also need to be able to talk to their clients and then maybe know what this bias is called in their native language. Boom. And now look at this. And we see that there's countless applications for this. We had Hazu Genius write a parent's letter in a case where we can also open Hazu's and existing pieces of content, which, for example, in Hazu can be a timeline of a student where we have some observations, maybe some things he's working on or some things he likes to do. And then we can actually ask Hazu to Hazu Genius to give it some feedback or to write a parent's letter informing them. And I had an example a few days ago with a school in Germany, and they wanted this parent's letter to also be summarized in a few bullet points, but then also having that displayed like this here in in German and in Turkish, because that's the language of the parents of that student. And this also really greatly helps communication in the real world. And you see now, it has now done this. I can export this content with one click as well. And what I'm getting then is a simple Hazu that I can share with you, that I can engage with you with. I can send you that link now, even invite you up here to collaborate and also edit things like this. And if there's something I want to change, obviously I can just do it here, press save, and everybody has that latest information. We saw now how a content like this can be created very quickly, how this is very versatile using Hazu's visual paradigm. We can use it and look at it in different views. We also can see things from a different perspective like this. And there you really see the power of a visual paradigm. So when we're actually leaving this old world and moving towards something that is redefinition. To summarize, we saw how a powerful paradigm that is no longer based on the analog principles, but on something that's much more brain-friendly and visual, can actually unlock the full power of new technologies as well. And in that combination, we, I think, have a really great match in order to boost productivity. And in the end, and that's what Hazu is all about, put the humans in the center again and say, hey, technology is always a means to an end, and it should help you actually fulfill your vision and what you're trying to do, and not make your life harder and more complicated. I wish you a wonderful day, and get in touch if you have any questions.